I see a lot of you are still signing on, but it's 7 o'clock. So welcome to our Crop Marketing Strategies webinar. I'm Christine Tidgren. I'm with the Center for Agricultural Law and Taxation. But our expert tonight is someone you all know, Steve Johnson, Dr. Steve Johnson, our Ag and Farm Business Management Specialist. And so he's got a lot of current information to share with you tonight regarding crop marketing. So we're going to get right started. I want to give you a couple of housekeeping tips as we proceed with the webinar. I wanted to let you know that in the handout section of your panel, there are two handouts that Steve has prepared. One is a copy of the slides that he will present tonight, and you can go to that handout section and you can download that handout. The other one is a crop marketing strategies report from early July, I believe. And so that's something you can read. So you can go there, you can download both. If you have any issues at all downloading the handouts, feel free to email Steve or feel free to email me afterwards and we can make sure that you get a copy of those. Also, throughout the webinar, we are asking that you post your questions to the questions panel. So in your control panel, you'll also see questions, and you can click on that and it will give you a way to type in your question. And after Steve has gone through his material, we'll go ahead and open it up and make sure that he has a chance to answer your questions as well. And he's assured me that he thinks there'll be lots of questions tonight based upon the material that he's presenting. If something needs clarification throughout, I will be watching the questions panel and I might interrupt him if someone has an urgent question, but otherwise we will try to preserve the questions for the end. And so the first thing we have to do tonight is actually ask you all to be interactive with us. Steve has put together a question that he would like you to answer. And so I am going to post this question and you should be seeing it. It says, what is the final national average cash price projected for corn and soybeans in the 2020 to 2021 marketing year that begins on September 1st? So it's not really a quiz. You won't be graded. It's anonymous. He's just giving you a chance to think about this and answer. We're going to make sure we get a chance for most people to vote. We'd like to get a good number of you to cast your ballot. And then we'll kind of show you how the audience voted, and then we'll give Steve a chance to tell us what the answer is and give us tips for crop marketing. All right, so I'm going to give you just a few more minutes. Most of you have voted, but I'd like to give more of you a chance. Oh, this is a good one. We're kind of spread all over the board here, Steve. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and I'm going to go ahead and share the results with you. So you should be able to see that 20% of you thought that the answer was A, which is corn at 320 and soybeans at 820. 34% of you chose B, corn at 330, soybeans at 840. 29% chose C, corn at 335, soybeans at 850. And 16% of you chose D, which is corn at 340 and soybeans at 855. And so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to turn to Steve, and I'm going to have him share his slides with you, and we're going to find out what the right answer is. So Steve, you should get a message there that you can go ahead and share your screen and go ahead and we can see your slides. If you just want to put them in slideshow mode, I think you'll be ready to go. And the other thing, Steve, somebody asked how many people voted. Well, 75% of you voted. So we have 180 of you online right now. So pretty good number. All right, Steve, take it away. And I'll see you guys in a little bit after the webinar so we can ask Steve some questions.
All right, the correct answer was C. The projection for cash price for the 2021 marketing year that begins September 1st changed. It changed on July 10th. It was a part of the WASDE report, World Agriculture Supply Demand Estimate. Last month when we met on June 16th, the answer would have been A. So I'll tie that message in, and I'm going to go right into the material because I really like teaching in this fashion because it puts me in kind of a high-speed mode, and I think most of you know I kind of teach in a high-speed mode. So here's what the July 10th WASDE report said. It adjusted to the 5 million acres of corn that didn't get planted. It kept the yield the same, so it gave everybody a 15-cent raise. Now, that's projected. So the fact is that this actually hasn't been measured. It's using an assumption as far as what supply and demand will be, but that's where that 355 corn and 850 beans came from. What I want to do tonight is a little different. Hopefully you participated in the Farm Doc webinar on the 30th of June. I just go right after it. Could USDA be right or could they be wrong? They are projecting supply and demand based on the acreage report, 92 million acres, and the 30-year trend yield of 178.5. We would then produce the second largest crop in history, 15 billion. Last month, they thought maybe that was almost 16 billion. So we're missing the 5 million acres, primarily in North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, that did not get planted. So the June 30th report adjusted the planted acres, but did not move the yield. I do not think the yield per harvested acre will be adjusted until September 11th. Because that is when they will use both the in-field yield estimates as well as the farmer survey data from 24,000 farmers. So there's the USDA number. That's what WASDE looked like. Is ending stocks are still large, folks. 2.6 billion is still the largest U.S. ending stocks since the 87 crop. So I don't think you can get so bullish because that we didn't plant those acres. It's still a large stocks to use ratio. Now, here's where I'm going tonight, and this is why I think it's important. What if the yield goes down? I'm going to use advanced trading's information. I, again, subscribe to them, and I like the fact that they give me a look. High yield, low yield. So you've got to focus not only on the supply, you've got to focus on the demand. And so what they are saying that if we only had 170 bushel an acre, that's a national yield. That's below the trend yield of 178.5. And we would likely then produce a 14.284 billion bushel crop. Demand would go down. If you don't have the supply, the demand will go down. We'll feed fewer livestock. We'll probably process about the same ethanol, and we'll still have reasonable exports of 2 billion. So what this low yield is helping understand, if the yield goes down, the price will go up. The 360 is not the national cash price. The 360 from advanced trading is what they think December futures will be on December 1st. Now, in reality, my bias is that we're likely going to be column A. So the reality is, I think this crop is going to be larger than the 30-year trend yield. It's the healthiest corn crop, at least Iowa. This is the healthiest corn crop that I've ever seen, and I've been rating crops for the last 17 years. So my bias isn't necessarily 185 bushel an acre, but I think this corn crop will likely come in at a record yield and record production. I don't know if it's 15.5, but I think the reality is starting to set in with these timely rains that we've received. And yeah, I know some of you got hail and wind and there's drought out there. But look in that right-hand column. I think the reality is come December 1st, December corn futures could be 320. And I think we'll eventually put December futures under some pressure. So my bias is that this crop is probably a little bigger than what we saw in July 10th. and we might not see that size of crop until we get out into the field and do the estimates. So I do believe this is a large corn crop. It will challenge us to harvest it, to dry it, and to store it, even though we've got adequate storage space, especially commercially. Let's look at soybeans. That answer, I think you probably guessed at, and that answer was 850. So even though the ending stocks are going down, WASDE increased the price to 850. Everybody got a 30-cent raise. That was 820. I'm really questioning without Chinese demand whether we'll get an 850, but I think we still have adequate time for soybeans, as opposed to the likelihood is the pressure that I think corn will come under. The potential is also there that we could have a short crop in South America, especially if we go back to La Nina, which is 55% odds. Let's play the same game. USDA projection says this: supply demand. Again, they're using a 30-year trend yield of 49.8. But what if we go hot and dry and the yield doesn't come in at 49.8, it only comes in at 45? We would see a slight decline, and I'm not so sure that export number is correct, but I think we would see ending stocks at 246, which to me means that we're going to rally corn on November 1st. November soybean futures would be 925. We'd really like that to happen. But I believe we're moving to the right. I think this bean crop is very healthy. And if we can get some timely rain, the likelihood is we're going to have a national yield above 49.8. And I think we'll see some pressure on November soybean futures, but not yet. We've got more time, I believe, on beans than we do corn. Ending stocks would go up, but they're not anywhere near the 900 million we had a couple years ago. But we'll be very dependent upon China to buy our beans. That's why beans rallied today, was China was in buying. So as we step back from corn and soybeans and we look at the 20 crop or the 2021 marketing year, I believe that beans are likely the crop that could go up in price because the ending stocks are still relatively tight. I believe corn's the crop that, unless we can get the U.S. corn crop in trouble in a hurry, or we stay hot and dry in the Ukraine, or China has problems, I think the corn crop, the highs are in. We got a rally. It was about a 40-cent rally. It played out in 10 days. And we can look back and say, shoulda, woulda, coulda. But what I've been following, and I hope you have been, is not the National Weather Service, not NOAA, is the trade uses what we call two weather models. The Global Forecast System, or they call this the American, GFS. On the left-hand side of the screen is what they produced yesterday, and this is their best guess. This is the moisture that's coming in to the Corn Belt next week, sometime between Monday and Monday. So over the next 7 days, starting on Monday, we're going to stay wet. We're going to be warm, really warm this weekend, but we've got these troughs coming in from Canada. And we are going to continue to see moisture. And I think that's critical. We've got 10 to 20 counties in west central Iowa that need this rain, that missed most of the rain that we had early this week. Illinois, Indiana, Ohio got rain over the last 24 hours. But the model on the right is the one that's the gold standard. It's called the European Ensemble. I'm getting my data from Nutrien and Eric Snodgrass. It's free. I posted that to the Virtual Ag Marketing Club's website. This is what changed the markets a week ago today. About noon, these two ensembles came out and said, wait a second, we're hot, we're dry for 10 days. We're going to burn up the U.S. Corn Belt this week. And suddenly these two ensembles changed. and that was it. The market sold off. I think you've got to get out of this National Weather Service 6 to 10 and 8 to 14, and you've got to understand that the trade is using these weather models, and it looks like we're going wet and we're going to stay warm at least next week and likely beyond that. What Eric Snodgrass calls this is wash and rinse. We stay warm, then we wash, then we rinse. This bodes well to this record U.S. corn crop. So let's take a look at the management scales. I'm not a market analyst. I'm not a commodity broker. I'm an extension educator. Put your eyes on the middle column and let's talk average. You're an average farmer in Iowa. Your 30-year trend yield would be 198 bushel an acre. We'll use the average price. That's coming from USDA WASDE, 335. I want to answer this question. Will I make money in 2020? You've got to understand that the government is going to provide support. If the cash price comes in at 335 for this marketing year, you'll get about a $48 per acre PLC payment. Price loss coverage. You won't get that payment until October of 21. It's calculated by taking the 335, subtracting it from the 370 reference price. So we are going to take a government payment and eventually add on to the 20 crop. There's also a likely CFAP payment. That's a coronavirus food assistance program. The one that you could start signing up for in May. It was based on 2019 production as compared to the unpriced bushels as of January 15th. And on average in Iowa, it turned out to be about $30 per acre. So I contend you've got government money coming at you. You probably already have the 30. Eventually the 48 is going to come from FSA in October of 21. But then let's total that. I've got a total gross revenue of $741.30. I'm average. Then let's subtract your cost. Iowa State does an annual estimated cost of crop production. Our medium yield of corn following soybeans has a non-land cost of $420. Our cash rent equivalent is $222. I'm not saying everybody has $222 an acre cash rent, but that's what about 1,600 respondents told us that that's the average, simple, across the state of Iowa. I'll subtract the total costs from the gross revenue, and I'm going to make about $100 an acre. And I believe that's realistic. Maybe you have higher costs. Maybe you own your land and you don't include that cash rent equivalent, but corn is the crop we're going to make the money on. Your break-even price would be $324. So stop thinking that $335 is too low or $310 is too low. The average farmer in Iowa that can grow an average yield and get an average price and gets government payments, then they're likely going to make money. Now, look in the left-hand column, the lower yield. This is where many of you are at. I got hail, I got wind, I got some parts of my cornfield that look like pineapples. I haven't had rain. I think you're going to trigger a crop insurance payment. If you just grow 10 bushel less than the average, and I'm going to use an APH and I'll share it with you of 190. If you just grow your APH in 2020 and you have an 80 or an 85% level of coverage, you're going to get a crop insurance payment. And so you look at the left-hand column and yeah, my break even is higher because I've got fewer bushels, but I'm still making money, even on rented ground, making a lot more money on my own ground. Now look at the right-hand column because I think this is where we're going. I think we're going to have higher yields on average. The majority of the farmers across the Corn Belt are going to find that extra 5 or 10 or 15 bushel an acre. You're going to get a PLC payment because it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the national average cash price for the marketing year. And I think that actually could be below 335. I won't be surprised that we're back to 320 by this winter. And so that payment will be even larger than 48. Going to get a CFAP payment. Probably already got it. I predict you're going to get another one. between now and September, I think there's going to be another CFAP payment come from this $1 trillion expense that the Senate is dealing with right now. So I will be surprised that there isn't another small payment coming. So you can see the crop that's out there that's growing. I think we're going to have lower break-evens. I think we can make money on this crop, and we don't have to store this crop for 1 or 2 or 3 years. I think you want to sell right into this, especially the bushels that you need to move at harvest. Now, I want to catch this group that's concerned about crop insurance. Too wet, too dry, hail, green snap. This is how crop insurance has worked for 20 years. It's going to work again. And so you're guaranteed your APH times the level of coverage, 85% in this example, and you're guaranteed the projected price. That is the December corn futures simple average in the month of February. It's 388 corn, it's 917 beans. Watch how you're going to trigger a crop insurance payment. Now, for some reason, you got wind and hail and drought and floods, and you're just one of those unfortunate farmers that got a lot of crop damage. You notify your crop insurance agent within 72 hours of loss, and then you understand that it's based on your final yield. Your adjuster isn't going to know your final yield. You're going to wait until you harvest the crop, and you might have to leave some check strips so they can come back out and measure what that loss was. So be a good communicator with your crop insurance agent and your adjuster, but watch the money. If the harvest price comes in around 320, all right, and I'm in that camp. You know, I think in October, simple average, probably around 320. And I'm guaranteed 626.62. Any yield on that farm of less than 195.8 would trigger an indemnity claim. And that claim would be around $25 an acre. I had somebody tell me today, did you see so-and-so's field that got wiped out by hail? And I said, yeah, I did see that field. You know, they're probably going to collect about $600 an acre and not have to harvest the crop. And in addition to that, they might have had hail coverage. They might have had production hail or companion hail. So the group that's not going to produce a crop, be careful thinking that they're not going to make money. They're guaranteed 388 a bushel, and they might not have to harvest those acres. So be a good communicator with your crop insurance agent as well as your adjuster, and make sure that when it's time to harvest, you're keeping good track of your yields across your units. I'd want to keep records by farm, even if you're in enterprise units. So let's do a quick review of the government programs. And we can update this now because we've got a CFAP payment, and that's how it was calculated. And maybe you didn't get anything because you're a good marketer and you didn't have any unpriced bushels on January 15th. God bless you. That's okay. But on average, I would say for most farms, maybe around $30 an acre for corn. They got 80% of it. They still don't have the last 20%, but I think we'll probably see that by late summer and fall. And then you heard Steve Johnson say this. I think there will be another CFAP payment. I think it'll probably be this fall. It will be based on 2020 plantings, where the earlier CFAP was paid based on 2019 plantings. Now let's go into the Farm Bill. Okay, you signed up, you elected and enrolled for 2 years. The majority of farms in the U.S. went PLC corn, ARC County beans, and that's exactly what we taught. So the PLC only pays if you're below 370 per bushel corn. Now we're going back to the 19 crop. That price is estimated at 360. So most everybody's going to trigger a small PLC payment on corn from the 19 crop. You're going to get it in October. I don't think it's extremely large. I'm kind of estimating it at about $12.75. It's the difference between 370 and 360 times 85% of base acres times your old yield. Now, look at the line that says 2020 corn, $48 an acre. You can still update your yield at the FSA office effective for the 2020 crop. You've got to do that before September 30th. So work with FSA. They should have wrapped up acreage certification hopefully this week, and they're wrapping up CFAP, and you can discuss what production evidence you need from 2013 to 2017, and then update your yield if you can create a larger yield. It's your crop insurance information. For soybeans, I don't know if there'll be an ARC County payment. Most people are in ARC County. There won't be a PLC payment for either year. We're likely not going to be below the 840 reference price. So I'm not sure PLC was a very good choice, but again, that was up to the individual farm, and you did a 2-year election and enrollment. Now, next winter, you get to do this again for the 21 crop. I think there's going to be a PLC payment on corn. I think the likelihood is we'll stay below 370, the effective reference price. And so I'm going to encourage you, based on the information that I see now this winter, I'd probably go PLC on corn and likely stay in ARC County on soybeans for the 21 crop, because now it'll be an annual decision. Then let's touch on crop insurance real briefly. The government pays on average 62% of your premium, and you never see the invoice. So maybe about $50 an acre is a federal government subsidy for insuring your corn crop, probably closer to 30 for soybeans. And then the spring projected prices were your guarantee on your APH times your level of coverage, 388 on corn, 917 on soybeans. And so for those of you that have hail or drought or floods, if it's widespread, I think you're likely going to trigger a price that's going to be much higher than what the cash price would be. And then don't forget, many farmers add production hail, all right, which isn't subsidized. So step back. If you were to ask me what percent of my corn and soybeans should I have had sold, I would say, I don't know your cash flow, and I don't know your break even, and you don't know your break even. But the average break even for corn following soybeans in the state of Iowa for 2020 is $3.24. For soybeans following corn, that average is $8.71 a bushel. So I still think we can make money in 2020. And I believe the break-evens are coming down, especially where we have these higher yields. So I'm going to be more comfortable selling, especially the extra bushels that are probably heading for commercial storage. It's play the same game with beans. And this is why I'm a little slow to sell beans, is because the likelihood is if you're average, and USDA says the cash price is $8.50, which I'm not sure we'll get there for the marketing year. Hopefully we have some weather problems in South America, and we continue to see large exports. But I want you to look down through the column: average yield, average price, average cost. Even if you averaged $8.50, you're not making money. So hopefully you've got much lower cost structure. You own your own land. It's not cash rented. When I look to the left side, if I've got low bean yields, I sure hope I've triggered crop insurance and crop insurance payments. I'm leaning to the right. I think these bean yields will come in higher than what we think, and that we can do better than the 30-year trend yield. That's just a little under 50 bushel an acre. So I want to encourage you. I hope you've got some beans priced, especially the beans that have got to move off the combine, because that's where we want to go. Let's talk marketing. Should I have sold this rally that we got in early July? Yes. This was my early July newsletter. It was a part of one of the resources that was attached to this webinar. This is what I've been using for several years. We call it Fibonacci, a famous mathematician that lived 700 years ago, because what Fibonacci said is that if you can identify a high, and I'm going to use the January 2nd high for December corn, and the low, well, that low was actually made on June 26th. This market bottomed on June 26th. This market likes to retrace itself. And the price targets that I was using were 353, 363, and 373, because I thought it was important that we have a price target. Now, we didn't come above 348.5, and I think that's the resistance. I think we're going to move to a trading range. I do not think we're going to take out the high. The high was exactly 363 on July 6th and July 7th. We went to exactly to the whole penny. 363 is where we stopped, and we didn't go any higher. And so I think the highs are in. The highs were July 6th and July 7th. This is the 10th straight year that corn prices rallied in the spring and summer and peaked. And we've not had a rally after July 16th. We have not had a rally that took out that spring or summer high since the drought of 2012. So I think we would struggle. I believe the corn will be well supported at roughly 328, 330, the low from April. But I think there's going to be a lot of resistance in this market. Now, we left a nice gap in that market. You can see it on the right-hand side. That would be my price objective. If we can come back into that gap around 343, that's probably where I'd want to do some more selling, but I'm not stopping. I think we've got to understand is we're not trying to hit home runs. We're trying to hit singles and doubles and get people on base. And if we miss the high, we miss the high. That's not the strategy. It's to sell incrementally when that market rallies in June and July. This has worked for 8 straight years, and I'm not walking away from the strategy. The likelihood is the highs are in, I believe, for December corn futures. But you've also got to consider the other risk. I think with a 15 billion bushel corn crop, you've got to manage basis. Now, we've been tracking basis at a Central Iowa elevator, and this is mostly the work of Ed Kordick and the Iowa Farm Bureau Federation. This is the March futures, and we track it every week starting at harvest. So what you see in front of you is going to be 6 years worth of data. Our basis is going to weaken. I think it will probably happen in the next 2 weeks. Might have already happened, depends on where you sell your grain. This is an elevator. I think we're going to go back, and our basis is probably going to look more like the 16 and 17, the red and the gold. And you said, why? Because those are large crops, and this is going to be a large corn crop. So we're going to see exceptionally wide basis. It will be very apparent by September that this basis is weakened, and the difference between the local cash price and the December futures, or in this case, March futures. Now, follow these trends, because what you see is if we can get out into the middle of November, then the basis appreciates. And most of this basis appreciation happens between the middle of November and the 1st of January. Look at where those 4 lines cross. So if I can put these bushels somewhere that I don't have to pay commercial storage, don't have to pay shrink, don't have to pay drying, then I can benefit from basis, but I've got to get beyond the harvest. I believe that the lesson that we've got to learn is I'm going to add a year. That was last year. Last year was an anomaly. Last year was a short crop. We're not going to have the basis we had last year. We're going to have the basis that we normally have when we have large crops. So I have to be very cautious. Let's take a look at the November, okay, and I'll pick up speed. Fibonacci, all right, January high, April low, retracements. Help me identify what price objectives I might consider for November beans. 889, 907, 925. Okay, we went to 912 and a half. We went there on July 1st and we stopped. I still believe there might be an opportunity to rally beans. I'm not throwing the towel in on beans. I think we'll move into a trading range, but I think there's 2 things that are very supportive of beans. Number one is China. China was in today looking for more beans. And we are hearing that there's weather issues, and especially in southern China. So I believe that there's an opportunity that we might rally back at this level again, hopefully. If we miss this bean market, I think you get another chance. So I want to be a little patient. I think we'll come back into this level that we were at before, that 912 and a half, maybe even the 925. But I believe the hot weather that's coming at us, in addition to Chinese buying and the lower dollar, all are good. And so the beans that I'm focused on are the beans that I got to move off the combine. If I've got to move beans off the combine, I don't have room for beans on my farm. Here's the basis play. Now, I don't think the basis is going to be anything like we had last year, but that basis at the co-op is probably going to look a lot like 16 or 17 again. Again, 18, remember, that was the Chinese fiasco. So I think you want to manage basis if your beans are moving to town at harvest. You want to tie up that basis, but leave the futures open. So, you know, maybe work with your processors so that you can make sure that you're 50 under, or at the co-op, you're 60 under, and that the basis doesn't get away from you as we get into October. Because last year was an anomaly. That was a short bean crop. And that basis, again, strengthened. And we had such a strong corn and soybean basis all winter that's why you wanted to reward that market. That's why a lot of people did basis contracts, etc. So let me put some closure to it because I want the questions, okay? We've got several marketing websites that we support. We also are working with the University of Illinois, so we try to complement FarmDoc and not compete with FarmDoc. So the next webinar will be a FarmDoc webinar on August 12th. Then we'll do our crop marketing strategies webinar on August 13th. But I want your eyes right in the middle of the screen, because what we're doing that's a little different is we're going to build out the Ag Iowa Commodity Challenge and the virtual Ag marketing clubs. So if you want this information, this timely information, you like the webinars, all right, this is what we've done. We've created one web page, and look at the top, live webinars. This is where we'll always post our live webinars. So it'll be a link to your site, Christine, the call site. All right, and then tomorrow, Christine will send that replay and we'll post the webinars under webinar replays. Cult site works the same way. So you're seeing us build something in front of you that you don't have to come to my meetings and workshops and seminars. Now, one of the best things that you could have read on July 9th was the long-range weather forecast. That's when Eric Snodgrass said, it looks like the models are changing. And that's when that market sold off. It's still a weather market, but I believe we're going to go warm and wet. And I'm concerned about things like soybean rust, fungus, and leaf diseases. And you're starting to hear about that. And then every 2 weeks, I write a newsletter. So our next free webinars are going to be August 12th. It'll be a farm doc, but it'll appear here. You can come right to the site and link to the farm doc, same way. Go to webinar, name, email address, and they'll cover the August 12th, which is the USDA crop production and USDA WASDE. I think it might be a non-event because USDA will not make major changes to their yields in August like they used to. And so Christine's going to ask you what might be some ideas at the end that you want to add. If I could teach the importance of estimating crop yields, I've been in cornfields. I'm seeing a large number of ears. I can count the kernels right now on the early planted corn. I can count kernels that probably are telling me that many of these cornfields are 200 to 230 bushel an acre. And you can walk out into your cornfields if they were planted in April and start to make similar assessments. Then also on August 13th, just as an idea, I think storage. Where are we putting these extra bushels that are unpriced? If they go to town, they're going to get shrunk. They're going to get dried to 14%. They're going to go under warehouse receipt. And that's why I want to continue delivering these extra bushels and avoid putting them into commercial storage under warehouse receipt. I would more likely deliver the bushels. And if I felt good about price rally, put them under a basis contract, but eliminate storage and eliminate basis. So that's it. I've left time for questions. Christine, you're gathering those. And let's play a game. Fire those questions at me regarding crop marketing strategies, government farm programs, crop insurance. I'm ready.
All right. Well, we have a number in the queue already, but we can go ahead and keep adding. So if you have questions right now, go ahead, look at your control panel, type those in, and we'll see how many we can get Steve to answer. All right. So it says USDA said at the June 30th acreage report that 12 million acres are yet to be planted. Do you have any update of the status of those acres?
No. I think it was just a general category that they did not know where these 12 million acres were. I believe that if they can't account for them, they say, hey, of these 300 and some million acres of the primary spring crops, they did not identify any specifics to that. Again, remember last year we had 19 million acres that were prevented from planting. Of that, 14 million of those were corn and soybeans. So I would anticipate that a portion of those are probably prevented planting acres, especially in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and parts of Wisconsin. That's where I think the PP acres are this year. They're in the extreme northern belt, but especially North Dakota. It was the prospective report thought they would plant 2 million more corn acres, and those acres weren't planted. So most of the 12 million probably prevented planting and unaccounted for late planted crops. Good question.
Here's another one about the price that you use, the average price. USDA projected average cash price is $3.60, but today our average price is $3. So how does it average $3.60?
Oops, I come back with that same question. The $3.60, the only 360 that I'm aware of was sitting in that middle column for low prices. The 360 was low yield, and that was coming from advanced trading. So I believe the numbers you should be focused on today is the 335 cash. That's the best guess USDA is giving you for the entire marketing year. So that could be some of the corn you priced last December that you're going to get 370 or 380 for. So 335 is the best guess for the projected cash price for the year. So again, that number was 320 last month. Now it's 335. In my opinion, I think we will struggle to get to 335 average cash price. I believe that number will prove to be too high if this is a 15.2 or 15.3 billion bushel corn crop. So right now, 335, wouldn't anticipate major changes in that 335 until we get out into probably December, January. And I'm thinking that number probably slips back closer to 330 or 320.
Okay, you said you published the Fibonacci retracements. Where do you publish these so we can watch for them in the future? And
My news. Go ahead, Christine.
Do you do those for other months, not just December contracts for corn and beans?
I've been writing on Fibonacci for 5 years. If you go back and look at my newsletters, so I've probably written 5 newsletters since January that I always go calculate Fibonacci's. I calculated them in the winter months for March corn and March soybeans. They worked to a T, especially soybeans. Because soybean prices peaked right at a Fibonacci retracement number. No, I just write a lot about Fibonacci. It's just a way to set a price objective once the market's sold off. So Fibonacci's hard to project until you see a high and you see a low, and then it's simple math. It's simply 38% of that difference, or 50% of the difference, or 62% of the difference. So don't make Fibonacci hard, but Google Fibonacci and understand he told us these numbers 700 years ago. The stock market today, our retracement of the stock market from the February high to the the March 23rd low turned out to be a Fibonacci retracement, exactly 50%. And now it looks like we're heading back to a 62% retracement of Fibonacci. So I'm not saying it's the only tool. If you want to use other tools, that's fine. But I need a number. I need a time, and the time was spring. And I need a price, and the price that I used was the Fibonacci retracements.
And Steve, where's the easiest place to access your newsletter for those who might not know?
The slide that's in front of you right now. Look in the lower third of that screen. There's my newsletters. You've got the early July, but I've been writing newsletters every month for 10 years. And so this is the latest newsletter, and you can kind of look down through there. And whenever I say price objectives, I'm talking likely Fibonacci. So my newsletters that I put out every month, and again, we'll be pushing these out. When you see that we're doing webinars, here's where you can register. So I'd bookmark or make this website a favorite. This is where I'm going to put most of my efforts all summer, fall, winter, because I don't think we're going to do the traditional in-person meetings.
Steve, can you tell us your perception of farmer-held grain on the farm and in-town capacity levels?
Yeah, my thought would be that if you have adequate storage facilities, you're going to pay for those storage facilities by understanding basis and carry and reducing your cost of drying and shrink. It's these bushels that go to town, and I'm not against the elevators or co-ops. They have a purpose. But these overflow bushels, this extra 20 or 30 bushels that you're likely going to produce in 2020, they end up in town. And I'm just telling you, is those bushels that end up in town, especially those that have to be dried, I would anticipate you're not going to make money on those bushels. By the time you pay drying and shrink and storage and interest, the market, cash price never appreciates. And I'm not saying build a bunch of grain bins. I'm saying sell those bushels. Get those bushels away from your farm at harvest. And if you want to re-own them, my gosh, you could use a minimum price contract. You could use a basis contract. So I'm not a big proponent of storing bushels much beyond harvest. I'll make an exception for soybeans. I'll store soybeans, okay, for 3 months and use the January HTA contract. But I think we are struggling with the corn that ends up in town, and we wonder why we are not making money. It's because drying, shrink, storage, and interest eats away at that profitability. So if I could book some corn today at $2.90, $3, $3.10 sounds too cheap, I think the government's probably going to send you $80 to $100 an acre. So that's why I think I've got to understand the government programs and the crop insurance, because my safety nets are sitting underneath me. I've probably got 3 of them right now. I've got crop insurance, I've got the PLC, and now I've got the CFAP. And I'm anticipating that in general, probably somewhere between $80 and $100 are flowing towards you per corn acre in 2020. You need to add that on to your gross crop revenue.
So should we lock in March basis before September for bushels we plan to move in March of 2021?
I don't think I'd be in that big a hurry yet. If you look at your basis, let's say you're used to seeing 15 under the March, and that basis was 20 under. I'd be tempted to lock it because I believe there's going to be a lot of bushels that are sitting out here. But if you can bring a lot of volume of bushels, you're going to bring 50,000 bushel in March, maybe you've got a little more flexibility. But yeah, you're on the right strategy. Let's go out and fix basis, especially at harvest, but I'm okay if that is an attractive basis, even if it's average. I probably want to tie up my basis that I'm going to make this winter. Cash flow is going to be king, but if this is a 15.2, 15.3 billion bushel crop, yeah, we're not going to get the basis play like we did last year. And the likelihood is a lot of my neighbors need cash. So I want to understand there's more basis risk in 2020 than there was in 2019. So yeah, I'm fine. Lock it in.
And Steve, here's somebody who would like you to explain a basis contract. There's no storage charges at a co-op if you deliver and have a basis contract. Could you explain that?
Yeah, a basis contract means that you fix the basis, you accept the cash, okay, and in receipt for that cash, the co-op will pay you roughly 70% of the value of the corn. So this is a credit sale contract. Understand, you're at risk. When you let the bushels go at the elevator to the co-op, even the processor, you sold the cash, but you eliminated storage. You fixed the basis, but In exchange, that merchandiser buys for you March corn futures. So you're still long March corn futures. And here's the answer to that. Google basis contract. I bet my name's associated with it. I'm a proponent of basis contracts, but I think you've got to be careful of losing track of those bushels that you're long futures. I'd be willing to deliver my overflow bushels of corn to the processor, and I accept that flat price here the next few weeks, but then look at putting those on a March basis contract. Hopefully, we can get some sort of a futures price rally between now and the 1st of March, but my expectations aren't exceptionally high. I believe the card that might play out will be South America. If we move to La Nina, which is the likelihood by late fall and winter, hopefully South America has weather problems. So I'm okay moving these bushels, 20, 30, 40%, my overflow bushels, generating my cash flow. Pretend you're in front of your lender and it's the middle of December. And your lender says, how are you going to pay me back? What's your answer? I want to get enough cash that I can pay these bills this fall and winter. I want cash flow, not ego, driving me to make these sales now.
All right, Steve, this one's from a little different angle. Do you advise spraying fungicide?
Ooh, that one is not in my wheelhouse. But I believe it's probably the hottest topic right now in the Corn Belt because of these likely warm, wet conditions that are coming at us. I believe that there would be justification for looking at spraying fungicides. I live in Ankeny, Iowa. I live 1 mile from a local pilot that sprays crop protection chemicals. And let me just tell you that he's up every morning at 6:30. So I'm guessing there's a lot of people spraying fungicides right now, or perhaps over the next week or so. Yeah, I think we will see probably record fungicide application across Iowa because most farmers feel good about their crops and they recognize warm, wet is a symptom for all sorts of fungus and leaf disease problems.
Okay, for soybean bushels sold now for harvest, would you recommend call options or open future positions?
I'd recommend call options, but I'm not in a hurry yet. I'd want to make sure that I understood that if this market comes under pressure, those calls could be just a little bit cheaper. And if you buy them beyond March, you're paying a lot of time value. So again, that basis contract's the same way. If you're going to go ahead and let the cash bushels go, you could replace them with a call option. It's called a minimum price contract. Or you could be long futures. That's the same as a basis contract. But the likelihood is that, yeah, I think soybeans would have a better chance to rally than would corn, because I think there's 2 factors behind soybeans that's probably not as much of corn, and that's China and then South American weather this fall.
Okay, the prices you are showing are future prices, correct?
The only futures prices that I showed you was in the left. The only futures price I showed you were on the 2 charts called December corn and November soybeans, and it had Fibonacci retracements. So yes, the futures trade every day, and the futures price are reflecting your cash price. You'll have to subtract the basis. But most everything I said tonight was national cash. 335 corn, 850 beans. Those are all cash prices. But we're understanding the futures price because ultimately it's the futures price in the distant months, what we call the deferreds, that will determine what will my corn and soybean prices be worth at some point in time. That's why when you hear the radio, you hear the futures price. They typically don't tell you the cash price, but you have to make that adjustment. The difference is simply basis.
So we only have a couple questions. So this is your final call to put questions in the question box. What does the worldwide balance sheet look like for corn and soybeans for supply, demand, and ending stocks?
Yeah. What does the world balance sheets look like? In essence, we have large supply of corn, more than adequate supply of corn. The U.S. produces almost 40% of the world's corn, and that's why the eyes are on us. For soybeans, we do not have the largest ending stocks that we've had, but we had a short crop in the U.S. last year. South America made up for it. They had record crops. So I do not believe the balance sheets are short for soybeans whatsoever. It's wheat that got the big play. Wheat rallied 80 cents a bushel in the last 3 weeks, likely peaked yesterday and went under pressure. It's probably the wheat balance sheet that's probably the most bullish now, because the world has a lot of demand for wheat. Wheat is primarily for food-related products, and the U.S. only produces about 11% of the world's wheat. But it's the weather problems in the Black Sea region. There are weather issues that are playing out in the Black Sea. They're getting timely rains now. They're a little cooler, but make sure that you're focused. Eric Snodgrass will do that. If you're following these videos that we're posting to the virtual ag marketing clubs, there have been weather problems in the Black Sea, and that's very supportive of wheat and somewhat supportive of corn. And there's also weather concerns in China, extreme wet conditions to the south, but dry conditions to the north, and most of their corn is produced north of the Korean Peninsula. So I think being in tune with what's going on around the world, but no, there is no shortfall of corn, soybeans, or wheat right now, because it looks like the Northern Hemisphere is probably going to have adequate supplies.
All right, a couple comments. 335 plus basis, 35 equals $3.70. I don't think December corn is going to get there.
I agree. I believe USDA is too high at 335. We'll do a webinar about Christmas time, and I believe that 335 will be 320. I believe USDA is overestimating, all right, demand. If we do not figure out this coronavirus, I do not believe that we will have as large of demand, especially for livestock feed and ethanol. I think we'll be the major player for exports. I think we're going to have much larger corn exports this year than we had last year, and we've got good quality corn this year. I believe USDA is probably too high, in my opinion, with 335 cash and 850 cash, corn and beans. I believe that we will see some pressure on this market between now and probably December, that USDA is likely overestimating the demand that we might have, especially for corn, because we'll have competition. But if we have a slow global economy because of coronavirus and we lock us down again, I think that the demand numbers that I see are too high today as compared to the reality. I think slow global growth is going to limit that demand for corn and to a small extent soybeans, but we're the only supplier of soybeans, at least for the next 6 months.
Steve, I know you're good at staying out of politics. This isn't political, it's just a question. Do you think the election will have any connection to future prices?
Yeah, I think so. I think the election will have a lot of connection to Chinese trade. And the fact is that China agreed to buy roughly $40 billion of agricultural goods this year and next year, and they're way short of that. So the reality is that I think China's buying now to try to save face. They said they were going to do something, and that's why the last 2 Thursdays we've seen rallies, because the export numbers come out on Thursday. I think China will be in for our soybeans. They were in today. I think they'll be in. So I feel good about the soybean prices. The likelihood is they're coming after our corn because we've got quality corn and they don't. They are selling off their old corn and replacing it with good corn. So I will not be surprised that the next 2 or 3 months are very good for exports to China and other locations, and it'll be to kind of save face from what they said they were going to do. But if this election changes and Biden's elected, I think China's going to want to renegotiate the trade agreements. I think they will basically say, well, that was with somebody else. So yeah, I think there's going to be all sorts of politics that play out with the election, and likely trade both before the election and after the election.
All right, Steve, this is my favorite question of the night, and I'll say in advance, apologies to our Hawkeye fans who we love very much. Can you believe that Iowa is afraid to play Iowa State in football this year?
Ooh, no comment. No comment, Christine. Now you're a Longhorn, so you don't have a dog in this fight. Hey, no comment.
I'm a Cyclone first and foremost. Yeah, my Longhorn blood is secondary.
I'm just kidding you. You know, and you know, that's an important question. I question whether we're going to have a football season. You know, I think you're already seeing college football waiver. I'm guessing the NFL waivers. That tells me this coronavirus, we're not out of the woods here, folks. I believe that this is going to linger for a longer period of time. That's why I say be careful that you think USDA knows exactly what the demand is. And it's just not us. And I think it's probably more risk for the livestock producer than it is for the row crop producer right now. Because if we don't have profitable livestock industry in the Corn Belt, then they're not feeding corn and soybean meal. So again, if people aren't traveling this fall and winter, they're not burning ethanol. So I'm not saying that, you know, I know that. I'm just saying we could be back here in, you know, 4 or 5 months and recognizing that the demand numbers that we saw July 10th were probably too bullish compared to what could have happened. That's why I want to continue selling into this uncertainty of production of the 2020 crop and making sure I've got adequate cash flow and not tying up these extra bushels in commercial storage. I think there's better ways to move these bushels on a flat price, grab the basis, go ahead and commit the bushels to delivery, and then we're probably going to have to store these bushels temporarily. Back of the envelope, Dr. Charles Herberg, over 500 million bushel of Iowa corn does not have a home this fall. It's probably going to end up in flat storage, going to end up in ag bags, and that's usually not the best way to handle that corn. And it's got to be dried. And so if we continue warm and wet into the fall, that's probably not going to be very conducive to corn that's sitting on the ground. So I think there's some risk, and I think the risk will be reflected of basis. I think we're going to have a really weak corn basis. And I want to make sure I fix that basis, old and new crop, before the 1st of August. I've got a couple weeks. Let's make sure I'm really in tune with basis.
And then the last set of questions just has to do again with handouts. So folks, if you didn't get a chance to download the handouts, they will be posted along with the replay on Steve's website. He's got that address right there for you. And at the Center for Ag Law and Tax, we also post the slides and the replay for you as well. So if you can't get them any of those places, then feel free to email Steve, email me. You should have our email addresses, or just Google us and you'll find us, and we'll make sure you get a copy of those. So I just want to thank you for joining us, and thank you, Steve, for the great information tonight. You guys all take care. Steve, is there your final words you want to share?
No, I just think there's more risk out here, and I think the fact that we're blessed with extremely good growing conditions, let's take advantage of this uncertainty of production that's still out here. I still believe there's a risk premium in corn and soybean markets, and I want to make sure I've got a plan, and it involves both futures price as well as basis. And then let's be safe, and let's make sure that we're back here for the next set of webinars. Again, University of Illinois Farm Doc, August 12th. And then I'll be on Thursday evening, August 13th.
Awesome.
Thanks, Christine.
All right. We'll see you all. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.